Well, those of us in the technology space have always felt that uh, a good portion of innovative advances come from good technology. So, and that's been my experience. And those startups and entrepreneurs who are doing some amazing things have some amazing inventions and solutions in that space. What our mission is really about is really giving parents encouragement and in some ways even the permission really to think about, autism solutions are out there that can be more holistic and alternative and yes, tech driven. And again, as long as they're evidence based, we're not talking about witchcraft. And unfortunately, these days you need to be careful because there's a lot of snake oil salesmen on social. Well, those of us in the technology space have always felt that uh, a good portion of innovative advances come from good technology. So, and that's been my experience. And those startups and entrepreneurs who are doing some amazing things have some amazing inventions and solutions in that space. What our mission is really about is really giving parents encouragement and in some ways even the permission really to think about, autism solutions are out there that can be more holistic and alternative and yes, tech driven. And again, as long as they're evidence based, we're not talking about witchcraft. And unfortunately, these days you need to be careful because there's a lot of snake oil salesmen on social media trying to sell us all kinds of harmful concoctions claiming to be autism cures. So we're not about that. We discovered that the mainstream services really don't do justice to people with autism, especially pharmaceutical options and some of the cookie cutter behavioral analysis services. So we pivoted and went in a different direction, a more holistic and innovative direction. And again, I think my legacy will be, as I said earlier, to encourage parents to explore and to become their true advocate. To become a true advocate means you do need to try some different things. You do need to have the courage to look at some, maybe non-mainstream solutions. That's one thing that our new foundation is really committed to, is really kind of networking with and encouraging folks in this space to share your resources, share your connections, share your technology, because we need to create the same kind of global movement in autism that is there in other areas like cancer research and other kinds of organizations.
And certainly sharing them outside of just the United States and Canada into
Yes.
other countries, and technology is a really good way to reach India and Africa and Thailand and everywhere. That's
Yeah,
really powerful.
absolutely. Yes. Well, those of us in the technology space have always felt that uh, a good portion of innovative advances come from good technology. So, and that's been my experience. And those startups and entrepreneurs who are doing some amazing things have some amazing inventions and solutions in that space.
So, what's inspired you to join us on the World Autism Summit?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful that you invited me, Karen. We have a friendship dating back a while, but also I think what our mission is really about is really giving parents encouragement and in some ways even the permission really to think about, autism solutions are out there that can be more holistic and alternative and yes, tech driven. And again, as long as they're evidence based, we're not talking about witchcraft. And unfortunately, these days you need to be careful because there's a lot of snake oil salesmen on social media trying to sell us all kinds of harmful concoctions claiming to be autism cures. So we're not about that.
Good.
Some of the things that trouble me, and I say this as a behavior analyst, and I say this as somebody who um, believes that, if I had a kid who needed our services, I would want a good behavior analyst to be doing those services. I'm a big believer in what we do. I have some really big concerns, though, about how we do it. And that's the bad side of it. That's some of the things that I've seen that sometimes I like to believe don't exist,
Mhm.
but they do.
And it took a fundamental shift in my perspective to really realize, instead of dwelling on all the things I couldn't do, let me really, nourish and nurture my skills and talents. And I feel, and I say that these are like seeds of potential. I think we all have seeds of neglected potential that we don't nurture because we're so worried about all the things in our life that don't work, the things that we don't have. And once I shifted and I said, you know what, I'm going to put that aside and nurture my talents and skills, suddenly my world started opening up. even though I have no close link to autism in my family, I feel close to the autistic community.
Yeah, sure.
So, if I can speak with organizations or parents or family members, that would be really great, because if I can use my experience, what I've been through and what I've learned. So part of it is based on my personal experience. And a lot of it comes from also what I've learned through filmmaking and being a professor, taking all that and taking it all and boiling it down to all those tools and strategies that I've learned. And then if I can use that to help others, I think that would be really great. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do, that I wanted to share with you and your audience. I talk about adversity. For me, it was physical. I went through all these spinal surgeries. I got screws in my neck. I tell people I'm literally screwed. I have screws in my neck. My head is screwed on.
We decided that we're going to make everything that we can to give them a full life. And the opportunity is that any other person in the world get in any age. So we didn't see the fact that they have a medical condition called autism as a barrier. We saw it more as this is the identity that they have. And from there, we just had to navigate the system. The system is very difficult to navigate. We navigate the education system. It wasn't easy.
It kind of caught you by surprise that you were going to be getting a divorce. You didn't know that was coming.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, because you think everything's going fine, and one day it doesn't, or maybe it's a gradual process. Sometimes we focus on our kids and on ourselves, and not really maybe paying attention to the relationship aspect. And that's another advice I would give to families, whether or not you're going through divorce. And a lot of people listening to this session may not have divorce on the horizon, but know that things can happen, and so it's always good to be aware and spend time on yourself, develop your skills, and develop the abilities and knowing what's out there, but also living our best life and doing what we can to have a good relationship, not just with our kids, but also with our spouses, doing self-care, finding people that are important to us that we want to spend time with. I think a lot of people spend too much time as we need to. We spend a lot of time focused on the kids, but sometimes we lose sight of other things and other relationships. And so my advice is to have as well-balanced life as you can, find ways to get people to help maybe with the kids so that you can go out there, enjoy yourself, whether you're single, married, or whatever your case is. Sometimes we need time for ourselves and our social life and self-care as well. When the divorce happened, unexpectedly, didn't really know what to do or how to go about that, where to turn for help. And I didn't find much support out there. And so long, hard road and getting the information, and ended up doing a really great job for my family and advocating for my kids. But I really thought, people shouldn't have to work so hard to get a good result and get through the process and through the overwhelm and all the complexities involved in divorce. Like you said, it's complicated enough. And then when you added children and trying to figure out what you need to do to advocate for those kids as part of the process, it makes it even more difficult and challenging. And so my goal is to share really a message of hope that if you're going through this process, it's okay. This is such sadly, a common occurrence among families with children with autism. I've heard numbers as high as 80% people go through divorce with their kids with different disabilities and special needs. And so people shouldn't have to work so hard and search for resources and not feel lost. And so through my learnings, through my experience, I decided that I want to share that with other people to help them. And so it's my hope to be able to let people know that there's hope out there. There are resources to help. There are ways to do this in a manner that puts the child first, so that you and the child and the whole family can have a good result in the process.
If we could save children from disasters, from being the child who flees and is lost, if we can help to provide a cohesion between our community first responders, our schools, our community members, and our families, so that everybody is looking out for our children with unique challenges. Is one size doesn't fit all. It is a spectrum. And so I think we have done a pretty good job in providing services and understanding of what it's like to be on the challenging side of the spectrum. But we don't exactly explain and do a great job information-wise that there are many people in our community who have autistic characteristics, who fit the diagnostic criteria, who are probably sitting next to you at a lunch table or are one of your friends when you go out, and you don't even know it. You don't even know it. And we have to make a bridge in that understanding that it is a spectrum, and that we have to provide support, compassion, understanding, and knowledge, because it's power, to everybody, and especially acceptance and inclusion, in my book.
The real estate industry really is a perfect intersection of people and place. And so I began to become fascinated with how places influence the experience that human beings have, and how places and the design of spaces specifically influence how people interact with themselves and with each other. So you can start to see the convergence here, right? Where people with very specific ways of perceiving the world are going to interact with place in a very, very specific way. And so the question that arises is, how can we design places to improve the quality of human experience?
for us to be able to create, a world where people's mental health is actually valued and supported, we have to deal with, this, 20% of the population, of the global population, that are neurodivergent. And so how do we change who we are as a society and as people, as communities, as friends, as coworkers, so that we can make that possible? I'd say the first reason is just my growing recognition of how important it is for our society and for communities to recognize neurodivergence, and to actually there's all sorts of words that are just loaded, and so I was going to say accommodate or include, but you get what I'm saying there. The other part is just my own sort of family experience. My son lives with ADHD, and definitely sort of has some classic neurodivergent qualities. And I wonder about him and people like him.
Set up NEBS, and the original idea of NEBS was to get people out of hospital and bring them back home. Basically, that was my drive. I just wanted to bring people back close to home and family, because obviously my niece Kitty was 8 hours away, and it was during COVID, and she was 12, and parents couldn't visit, and she was just left and alone and damaged, if I'm perfectly honest, through it. And unfortunately, that damage is now sort of coming back around again, and we're looking for some sort of residential care for her because she's just not coping in the community. But if she was treated in the community at the age of 12, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. And that to me is almost criminal. Autistic people, they're underserved in the UK and quite often hospitalized. That really worries me. So institutionalized. And we changed the Mental Health Act, but when the people are institutionalized, quite often they're sent hundreds of miles away from home for their care and support, away from their families, away from the people that are really, and we know that if you're autistic, your family and your unit and your keeping that routine and keeping the sameness, and you get placed in a psychiatric unit with people who are mentally unwell, hundreds of miles away from home with no specialist staff who are trained in autism. That there's a lot of lip service paid to looking after or with people with autism, because it's become just that little bit trendy. Everyone wants to be neurodiverse now, but when you actually look at it, and sadly it is, if I look at profiles, everyone has some form of neurodiversity, and I think they probably do to some extent, but it's just become one of those trendy things, but it's not done with the intent of improving the lives of people with autism. So you get sort of campaigners who will talk about themselves all the time and how magical, but they don't actually think about the the real complexities of life that people face who are autistic. So, and to me, you know, that's my driver. That's my why. It's about working with the most magical people on earth. Have this burning frustration to make things better for people, and it's not just with autism, it's the intellectual disabilities that go with it and the comorbidities that sit quite often with autism as well. So you get the anxiety and the depression and the mental health issues which quite often sit on top of that. And I've sort of always worked, I suppose, with the far end of the spectrum, where I work with people with autism with severe self-harming, severe suicidal intent, and quite often that's driven by society's acceptance.
Why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Because I've worked for the last 40 years with people with intellectual disabilities and autism, mostly with autism. I've become a fairly sort of, I would say, autism. I hate to use the word specialist because I think that's a bit egotistical. I just have a lot of experience of working with autistic people, and being neurodiverse myself, it's my tribe. I understand how they work. I understand how people think with autism, and to me, it's just magical, and I can't imagine working with a different group of people that just drives me every day.
Gary, tell me, why are you so excited about presenting at the World Autism Summit?
I suppose one of I'm so excited about is that it's an international community. Autism isn't bounded by country boundaries, and is a national and international problem. And the World Autism Summit addresses that issue about bringing the world together to actually sort of talk about autism, rather than making it just a county or a country or a province issue, because it's not. It transcends borders, and that's what the Autism Summit is doing. It's bringing people together from all around the world and breaking down those borders to actually still keep neurodiversity and autism front and foremost in people's minds.
It's so interesting, some of these autistic people. I mean, they're brilliant
Yeah, I know.
at a certain thing because they get so locked into it, and numbers and music. There's some famous guy who does music. He's very autistic. He doesn't want to talk to anybody off, but give him that platform and he's brilliant. And it's so fascinating. When you think about it, it's fascinating.
I know.
Understanding with his social skills to understand social situations that happen, using a sport like baseball for that, Really, you learn through winning and losing. You learn from striking out or hitting a home run. Every single opportunity is a learning opportunity. It really is. And we need to instill a message in society that is better based on, we're always learning every single day. It doesn't stop when you get out of high school, and it doesn't stop, especially if you get a certificate that says doctor on it. So we've moved from the competitive model of basing it off of what you think to be a sports league that's based on wins and losses. Oh, my team's doing great. Oh, my team's doing terrible. They're never going to make the playoffs. To instilling those with disabilities and especially autism, people like myself, into their greater communities, because when they graduate out of high school in a lot of places across the country, what happens is they go home, and a lot of them really don't get out and do much because they're not encouraged to go out there and participate in society.
Mhm.
And that has to change. During the pandemic, we realized that both on-field and off-field opportunities through esports, through a new online leadership academy, it's all needed to be successful.
What's the purpose of alternative baseball?
Alternative baseball provides the authentic baseball experience for teens and adults ages 15 years of age and older with autism and other disabilities. And really, it's a tool where we extract the benefits from the sport of baseball, the character building, the instilling values, the learning from experiences. We use that to help them integrate into their own communities. Better sense for us to consult everywhere else outside the United States and Canada to help them get their own local programs up and started, because they need the resources just like we do here. In addition to setting up local programs that are licensed by Alternative Baseball, globally, we're going to start consulting for programs for children that are below the age of what we typically serve to help others set up their own programs for that age range. And we're going to be talking to those across the globe about setting up their own local programs that are pretty much like Alternative Baseball in their own individual areas. Because trying to license our structured program globally, it's a nightmare when you have all these laws, you have all these standards and practices that are different from area to area, and it is very costly and expensive. Well, the biggest thing for me is not only continuing to promote acceptance and awareness on such a wide global level, but also promoting the need for community integration and more opportunities, more resources to be able to set up an infrastructure for those with disabilities and with autism to become more successful in the future. better sense for us to consult everywhere else outside the United States and Canada to help them get their own local programs up and started because they need the resources just like we do here. In addition to setting up local programs that are licensed by Alternative Baseball, globally, we're going to start consulting for programs for children that are below the age of what we typically serve to help others set up their own programs for that age range. And we're going to be talking to those across the globe about setting up their own local programs that are pretty much like Alternative Baseball in their own individual areas. Because trying to license our structured program globally, it's a nightmare when you have all these laws, you have all these standards and practices that are different from area to area, and it is very costly and expensive. So it makes
every Friday night I would end up going to the long-term care center to hang out. And this was from probably about the age of 12 all the way up until high school. And that's when I learned about music therapy. So I had all these beautiful music moments, but I wanted that human connection part around music, and I didn't want to be a performer. I knew I didn't want to perform. I just couldn't. If you're not performing, then it's just a hobby in your basement. But I knew I wanted more out of it. And so when I heard that music therapy was an actual profession, and it would mean that I would be able to sit with music, sit with people, make music with them, talk about music, identify our feelings around music, could use music to help people feel more healthy and well. I just couldn't think of anything else that I'd rather do. And I just hope everyone has the opportunity early on in their lives to have some form of live music making within your community or within your schools. And so I was really fortunate to have had that. And when my granddad had a stroke at the age of 62, it was actually his second. It was significant. He no longer could walk or talk, and he was put in, I say put in a long-term care facility. And it was great nursing, but there were no other quality of life additions.
My desire to reach out and tell everybody in the world, look, you're not alone. Other people have these experiences. Other people have these feelings. Other people have these behaviors. There's nothing wrong with you. There's a lot wrong with the way that society views you, because a lot of society doesn't know anything about neurodiversity. So that's why I welcome the chance to do this. Because diversity, is the fundamental of evolution. It's what ensures species survival. There is nothing, including neurodiversity, that isn't there, put there by nature, or however you want to see that, as something that contributes to the survival of our species. And that is something that we need to embrace and to celebrate, and that I want to communicate. I am and have been for well over 20 years looking to make an impact and to make life easier, not just for those who have neurodiversities, but also for their families, and to destigmatize it, because in many cultures, having a family member with, who is different, is seen as very, as something to be ashamed of or to hide away. Well, I want to break down all those barriers and explain to people that no, it's actually, in a lot of cases, not all by any means, but it's very important to celebrate diversity, and that includes neurodiversity.
And then we also have the first non-speaker multimodality communicator class for creatives, writers and actors that are non-speaking. And we've again debunked myths where we're doing choreography and performing live on stage. And they've created some phenomenal videos that that share their truths and their experiences. Collaboratively over 35 original musicals. And the ones that Karen's talking about, we have a musical. Over pandemic, we couldn't meet in person, so many of us creatives do. We just pilot, pivoted and started doing classes online. Our students self-tape. We had written a musical, and they self-taped themselves using their iPhone. They self-taped.
Wow.
And we created 2 original films.
Wow.
Yeah. And one of which may be going into production as a feature film. So we're keeping our eyes up for that. So that's been quite extraordinary. So I began a program in my home and training lots of different people how to work with my son. And gradually, inch by inch, like a butterfly emerging from chrysalis, he chose, and I love to say chose, he chose to be more part of this world.
Wow.
Yeah,
still not skills.
Thank you. Still non-speaking, still autistic. So there's no cure here. The cure was about curing me of my need for normalcy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
We're not trying to cure anybody. We're just trying to accept, love, and appreciate and focus on the gifts, strengths, and talents of people and let them be who they are.
Let them be and help them to discover who they are.
Right.
And I developed a methodology and I started training my creative friends, actors, singers, dancers, open-minded special educators in how to use the arts, creativity to understand and enter the world of someone who is on the spectrum. Now, my son is non-speaking, he's severely autistic, and but when we connected with him in a creative way, accepting and appreciating and joining and celebrating everything that he is and was, he connected with others as well. So I found a doctor in Maryland. I found Dr. Stanley Greenspan, may he rest in peace, and Dr. Barry Prezant. And I found people who I like to say co-signed my unique way of being with my son. And they told me to continue following his lead, following his need, and that make connection the most important thing, which was quite easy for me because that's what I've done in my entire career is connect through creativity. I found that when I would connect with him like that, he'd be totally interested and engaged in our world.
When we did art, I often played for them music, and I often played for them the Handel piano suites that Keith Jarrett was playing, and on the piano. And my students, after a number of these sessions, they would come into my studio and walk over to the CD player and stare at it. It was as though they were saying, "Erica, music." And that nonverbal communication, they showed me their pleasure. They showed me their connection to the music. They showed me their connection to something that we were doing together with art making and music. It was unspoken, but it was spoken nonverbally. So that's my big connection to this, the beauty of the nonverbal work that all of the arts bring to all of us.
As you said, the arts are essential, and we're not just bringing anything to schools. We are enriching schools with the arts. We are there, I'm sure it's familiar to people in a lot of parts of the world that the arts are often pulled from curriculum, and access to the arts is often limited. And so EASE, as you had said before, stands for Everyday Arts for Special Education. But we also think it's just good. It's for every student. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit as we talk more about our approach and how we work with teachers and with students. But the program, as you said, has been federally funded. So that means the U.S. Department of Education saw our program and believed that it had benefit to reach students with diverse learning needs, and to do that through the arts. What I have seen in terms of setting schools up for success is by partnering with them in a very intentional, in a very collaborative way, and with a lot of compassion. I think as people who've spent a lot of times in different education systems, I know I've been like very underfunded daycare centers all the way up to college classrooms. Institutions have a lot of different challenges, and educators in those systems have a lot of different challenges. And so I feel like as people coming in to support, I think we've been very successful in doing that with a lot of compassion and understanding for what is upon them to educate young people, and particularly working with young people who are on the autism spectrum. Not all schools have the same resources. Not all schools get the same funding. Not all, families have access to the same resources to be able to carry the learning from school to home.
World examples, or like talking about it in more of like an intellectual way is one way, but you need actual practical stories, or like certain little narratives, moments, right, where
people can relate.
Yeah, it's hard to relate. It's so unique. It's so uncommon.
So did you have problems in your relationship at the beginning?
Oh, we did. Our first year together was our hardest. We just made a video on social media that blew up about this, because I'm like, the first year is usually sunshine and rainbows before the real stuff kicks in. But with Andrew, it was like all the real stuff right up front. There's not very many women who started dating a guy who just so happened to be autistic and didn't know it, and finding out that process saved their relationship. Like, it's just a little more rare. So I feel like that's what the world needs. And we spent 18 months writing our book, and we worked with a writing coach, Teresa de Grosbois, who introduced us to you. And I feel like the stars just aligned for our book, because the world needed to hear our story. And here we are.
To revert back to my first love, which was travel. I've traveled the world, and when I was diagnosed with MS, it changed how I travel, but it did not stop that I love traveling. So I think that what we need to do when it comes to autism or Down syndrome or any developmental disability, and I apologize everyone for the stutter. That's my little gift with birth, just from MS. But the most important thing is that you have to have the family member who is on the spectrum. You have to understand that they need to be held in the limelight for planning this trip. They need to feel that they're the most valued.
Yeah, well, specifically with gaming,
Mm.
games have become less about building a fun like thing to play and more of a dollar extraction process.
Yeah.
They see their customer base as little gold mines that they can just pick away money out of, right? So it might be $2 here or $3 here to get the extra power up or new builders or whatever it is. But yeah, those can definitely add up, and there's a lot of psychology that goes behind video game design nowadays, just how they can get that money out. In this day and age, we're more connected than ever, but we're more disconnected than ever, right? Like there's so many tools that we can connect with, but there's more depression, anxiety, and like loneliness in our society now than there ever has been. So
it's time to change that.
Yes, 100%. And really the way that I view it is having those person-to-person connections, right? Speaking heart to heart rather than pushing my agenda, you pushing your agenda, and us butting heads.
How can we set up systems for success in partnership relationships?
Yeah, so I think one of the big tools that's come along in the last couple of years that everyone can use for partnerships, collaboration, is the internet, right? We all are able to connect wirelessly within a second, like you and I today, right? We're connecting from miles, kilometers away, and we can do this in a heartbeat and share our ideas, collaborate, and then also see what different resources are available that we can connect each other to. So and I think more than just like connecting on Facebook or Twitter and having these little 2-second blurbs and texts. I don't know. I feel like I was born a generation too late. I'm very old school in the fact that I think person-to-person connection is what it's all about. It's everything that we need is already within ourselves. It's just about unlocking that untapped potential. So yeah, really just helping people understand their unique gifts, talents, specialties, what they can do, and then seeing what areas that I can help out with, And I think just because finances are pretty much the cornerstone for really everything these days, like I'd love to say we live in a world where money is not an object and you can do whatever you want without worrying about finance. It is a very big means to an end.
Tell me what inspired you to be part of the World Autism Summit?
Fantastic. Well, it really just off the bat, it sounded like a really good opportunity to speak on financial literacy, help individuals with autism just take control of their lives and live a more fulfilling and fruitful life. I find a lot of the time when you're dealing with finances and you're dealing with neurodivergence or disabilities, that it's just an extra layer on top of things. And there are people that are not on the spectrum that are having difficulties with their finances, So
Yeah.
I think that having that extra layer of like complication means we need to, give even more support.
When couples separate, which it's very common with those with have children that are autistic, very common. The rates are quite high for separation divorce. What I found is when they separated, now they had an extra cost because when they separate, another person has to get another place to live, another apartment or whatever it may be. So the income is less than what they normally had, and they don't have money to put into a plan because they don't have enough. They pay their child support and do this, they do that, they got to do, all the different things. So the system doesn't really work the way we would like it to happen for the future for these individuals, these men and women with autism. Family law to lawyers is adversarial. There's a winner and there's a loser. But who really loses are the children in the process. And so this was the last thing I want to happen. So I worked a lot with our government, the federal government, and then to change the law, to help change it. And the most they could do was say that they recommend that lawyers send the children to mediation, send the whole thing go to mediation with children, so that that there's less damage done to the children in the process. Because when there's a winner, there's a loser. The loser is going to go back to court. When I first found out that she was Asperger autistic, I didn't know what it was. I never studied that at university. That never showed up autism, but I began to learn because I owed it to my daughter. Well, I went online and there was nothing there, but guess what? I found a site back in the mid 90s, and it was Autism Today. It was Karen Simmons. She had put a site up and put books and different things that were there. And I began to get these books, begin to learn to be the best father, the best advocate I could for my daughter. That's amazing. I know. And so what my goal was, and especially with this summit, was to move the needle. And I agreed with that, to hear voices from all over the world, that they could take things that we have. We can learn things from others, and we could all become equal. And we begin to treat those with autism as equal partners, because they are extremely bright. Most are extremely bright, above average. I've come across different cultures that deal with mediation. Some, when I was in Africa, dealt with mediation where they would lead them on the street, put them out because there was something wrong with them. The community did not accept them. There's others in that where, such as in the Asian world, that what they do is they hide them. They put them in the basement and where no one can see them. There's other cultures where they went and did was they simply put them outside and locked them so they couldn't get away.
So personally, as I mentioned, I've been working with families for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
We have family members who are, neurodiverse in all different, parts of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've been speaking for a long time and I work with a lot of families, I'm able to share my experiences of what people have done the proper planning
Mm-hmm.
and people who have done no planning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm able to take that expertise and share that with people. And what we really do is we give people choices. And so what we try to do is we try to look from the future back and we say, here's what life could look like. Here are the possibilities. And here are the strategies you need to think about to implement today in order to help you and your family get there.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a lot of families have heard about special needs trusts.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So special needs trust is a big portion of the planning that we do. Now, we're not attorneys and we don't write the documents, but we're dangerous enough to know how to create them, what the purpose is, and the benefit to you and your family.
What's one of the biggest challenges facing parents of children on the autism spectrum?
Kind of what a little bit of what we were talking about, right? Is the challenge is that there's a lot of jobs that wind up getting lost because the demand on them to take sick days off. So if they don't have an enormous amount of holiday pay or compensated paid time off, they're usually inconvenienced, and it's not easy to find doctors for your children anyway. And then when you do, it's generally during the workday.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that parents are put into a position where they're losing their jobs, they have to change careers, or they just have to take care of their child full. There's some reports that'll go into the presentation is about $60,000 a year is the average cost to caring for a autistic child, and to put that additional expense on a parent that's not expecting it, especially in low income areas, these become very, very challenging. So what I thought, based on what you had asked me to do on this, is maybe come up with just 2 solutions that might help parents cope with some of those challenges. And that's what today's event is going to be about.
Awesome.
So, it's a lot of time off of work. And so employers view them as non-productive employees.
I know.
Parents feel the guilt that they need to leave their job and take care of them full time, and some do. Some have, depending on how where they are on that spectrum, may need more care. And then what happens to a highly educated person who has made large sums of money all their life, and now they're in this predicament? How do they make that money last? So whether you have children on the autism spectrum or not, I think this information will help. But I really geared it to people like us that face those challenges and say, a lot of parents lose their jobs or are forced to change their jobs. I mean, I can't tell you how many IEP meetings and 504 meetings I got to go to and doctor's appointments, and no one can hold a full-time 9-to-5 job and do all those responsibilities.
Do you think that by establishing a career for a person with autism, that could lead them into financial success?
Well, yes, it can lead to financial success. However, people on the autism spectrum are held accountable of their independent lives. That's why people on the autism spectrum do need the loving push, not only the support from their families, but also you never stop learning. I've always advised my peers to never stop learning. Some people on the autism spectrum do need to take classes on how to manage their finances and how to do life skills. These are the important classes that people on the autism need in order to refresh their brains, to stay independent, stay diligent. It's the key.
But how can everyone develop programs with people with autism to make the world an easier place to navigate?
Well, there are many ways that a lot of people who work with people on the autism spectrum or autism themselves there's many different ways. But in my example, I am currently working with the Stanford University's neurodiversity project program called REACH. So this is a program where I assist students doing studies and developing programs on how to help our neurodiversity community find ways to make it better for future generations. For example, REACH will show future generations of neurodiverse students and their families on how to transition their interests and passions into any career that can lead to sustainable, independent lives, and programs for parents on how to help neurodiverse children get into that level.
Temple really inspired you, as she's inspired so many people. Tell me a little bit about that.
She's incredibly amazing. When I first saw the premiere of the HBO movie Temple Grandin, it shows me that if Temple Grandin can have a career in the field she wanted to be, then I can. The same thing with animation, and therefore Temple Grandin has been my biggest inspiration throughout the years since I first discovered her. And And therefore, I aspire to be the Temple Grandin of my generation. Reason why I wanted to do something in the autism world is that people on the autism spectrum struggle to become independent. And I've noticed that the unemployment and underemployment rates are incredibly high. So I strive to help people on the autism spectrum get into their sustainable, independent lives. But people on the autism spectrum are really smart, but all they need is great support, the loving push, as what Temple Grandin mentions, the loving push from their families, and to help them get into the career path with the what they want to be, the dreams. But the reality is that there are some block paths that people on the autism spectrum have to solve, and just because people on the autism spectrum have the dreams that they want, well, it doesn't mean that they're going to get the dreams they want. People on the autism spectrum must find a way.
How do you want to make the biggest impact in the world around autism?
So the biggest impact in the world of in my area of expertise is I really wanted to help people on the autism spectrum be able to turn their passion, whether it's animation or film or any of their subjects, into a career that can lead to sustainable, independent lives. And my company, and this ties the mission for Danimation with help. That's why Danimation helps people on the autism spectrum prepare for their career paths that they wanted to be in.
There is an awareness problem. And I think that, a lot of folks, they want to hire this from this population, but they don't know exactly how to do it. And it's really up to us to go enable these both large enterprise employers and small businesses to be able to hire from the population and to know. And I think the world needs to know that you can hire from the population. They're perfectly capable of working. And frankly, when they're given the right structure and support within the organization, they will outperform their peers, their neurotypical peers, 10 times out of 10. And it is really significant.
It's what's interesting is that every time you show a video, it's very difficult to give a justice to this beautiful environment, to the immersive worlds that we've created. So I highly encourage everyone to try them in a virtual reality and really start adopting to our platform, maybe helping us with thoughts on how we can improve it in the future. We're very open to collaboration, as you know, and opportunities to work together. We know that we have a lot of work ahead of us. We're very excited about it, and we feel happy and fortunate to be here at the World Autism Summit to present what we've accomplished so far. And we're hoping that it will allow us to have unique opportunities that otherwise we wouldn't have had. So really appreciative and humble to be here. What we looked at was a Akiva verses. We looked at three most challenging in our opinion problems that we wanted to solve. One is the cost barriers. So even if with the insurance that in the United States was the providers that are covering a lot of therapies for autistic families, there's still difficulties to cover everything that needs to be provided. So the cost barriers exist in the United States, but they exist even more in other countries because at the moment the United States is the only country where insurances are provided help and relief for autism families.
Now, most of these large company programs are really aimed at the most capable of neurodivergent people. For a lot of these programs, a lot of these employment programs, you can't even be evaluated. You can't even get into the evaluation pipeline without an undergraduate degree. So you're already talking about folks that do have the capability to navigate an undergraduate degree at a university. So that immediately limits it to a subset of neurodivergent people. And of course, we need to make an impact for everyone, for all neurodivergent people. And this concept of constantly communicating, constantly teaching, and constantly exhorting organizations to change is critical to the change we're trying to make. It's critical to getting organizations to embrace this vision of neurodiverse employment as a value proposition. So, Karen, that's what inspired me to become involved with your summit.
That's great.
Karen, the impact that I'm attempting to make centers on employment. And this is a new vision, right? This is a vision of how neurodivergent employees can make a contribution, a value proposition contribution. This isn't charity. This is about value proposition. And this way of looking at it is very new to many companies and organizations. It's been 10 years since SAP first announced their Autism at Work program. And although there's been many anecdotal success stories of other companies following their path, there really is no data to suggest that the 80 to 85% unemployment rate among people who are neurodiverse has changed that much.
I had a paper route, which was an excellent and complete business in miniature, kid size. That worked very well for me. And what we add on to these characteristics that I mentioned of repetition, having to achieve a certain proficiency, doing it whether you like it or not, now you add in what I call customer service. In other words, you have to do it well enough so that the customer keeps you or you don't get fired, and that the person wants you to come back to mow their lawn or to continue delivering their newspaper. Although newspapers now seem to be delivered electronically, so there isn't much in the way of newspaper routes anymore. But there's other kid-sized jobs that can be looked at as the child enters middle school and into. Into the uninitiated eye, everything looks great, as any quality school would be. However, if one of us were to go, any of us who are familiar with autism, what you'd notice is that about 30% of the students are autistic.
Huh.
And they're included and taught with everybody else. So that makes for one unique factor about daily life therapy, is that it's the only approach that's used for regular education and autistic education. The others are specifically for children with special needs, autism or otherwise. So I find that fascinating. The potential of autistic individuals is unlimited, just like it is for everybody else. And I think it goes back to parents, my parents, who, when I was struck with the regressive autism bomb at 18 months, as you said in the introduction, and it took them a whole year to find a place for diagnosis. And when they did, finally at 2.5, because there was so little known about autism. And also, as you said, I was recommended for institutionalization. However, my parents realized that no, this was not the way it was going to go. And they convinced the school to take me in about a year. And it was during that year that my parents implemented what we would today refer to as an intensive home-based early intervention program.
Recent experience we had with one of our employer partner, someone autistic job seeker didn't want it to go and participate in the interview because she thought that she is not qualified. And we really put in a lot of efforts in convincing her that based on our understanding, you are qualified. Yes, you are lacking one or two very minor things, but the hiring manager will be open and it's okay to just give it a shot. And she went for the interview and she got the job. And this is with one of the very large global life science pharma company.
moving the needle of understanding and success around the world for people with autism and neurodiversity. And we are so happy to have you here helping us do that. And I'd love for you to tell us, what you're all about with Mintra, and just share your story and share, what you're all about.
Sure. Thanks for having us here. My name's Jillica, co-founder and CEO at Mentra, and we have Connor. I will not spoil his intro. But yeah, we are the co-founders at Mentra, really building the next LinkedIn for neurodivergence with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, different forms of cognitive diversity. We ourselves are neurodivergent and have a neurodiverse team that are all building this change that we see in the world of really empowering the 1 in every 7 humans to find meaning, purpose, and fulfillment in their careers and in the working world.
And women at a very young age realize that to fit in, they have to, quote, look normal. And so that's learning to mask. And Spectrum Me Matt gave me permission to use this. There's the person who you really are and the person you have to be to survive. And masking is often what you need to do to survive. You have to sort of look as non-autistic as you can, but number one, that's exhausting. It takes an enormous amount of self-monitoring, an enormous amount of self-doubt, an enormous amount of self-effort. Most people have to recover. Most women on the spectrum in unstructured situations, in situations where you have to make small talk, are overwhelmed, stressed because they're thinking, what am I supposed to do? How do I do it? Am I doing the right thing? Am I saying too much? Am I not saying too much? Am I looking right? And it's exhausting. It is completely exhausting. But to somebody looking at them and functioning in their job, they might say, well, she does fine because she's in a role. She knows what she's doing. She knows what to say. When I evaluate women, I do it one at a time. But for that person, it can be the biggest thing. People have called it life-changing for them. But in terms of reach, it's my hope that writing and speaking and being on social media will have a large reach, because hopefully a lot of people will hear our message. A lot of people will learn. And that's what I'm hoping to do. There are new understandings coming out, both from research and most importantly from the autistic community themselves, about what is autism. What does it mean to be autistic? And not as translated by somebody who is neurodivergent, neurotypical and doesn't get it, but from the perspective of being autistic. And especially women, as you said, because women are so often undiagnosed. Women can have as many autistic traits as a man does, but not be diagnosed. And because of that, they're invalidated and they can have a lot of shame, they can struggle, and it's not, but they're thought of as just being crazy, or because after all, you don't look autistic. there are new understandings coming out, both from research and most importantly from the autistic community themselves, about what is autism, what does it mean to be autistic, and not as translated by somebody who is neurodivergent, neurotypical and doesn't get it, but from the perspective of being autistic. And especially women, as you said, because women are so often undiagnosed. Women can have as many autistic traits as a man does, but not be diagnosed.
There's a crying need for what I do. And I don't know about Canada, but I'm sure it's the same as here and other places, is that the most disabled people get services from rehabilitation, vocational rehabilitation agencies first. And there's a whole lot of people who are highly intelligent or normally intelligent, and they just are not getting the kind of services they need. And the kind of services that there are tend to be short-term and rather intense. You know, you go for a weekend or a week or maybe a 2-month course, and you learn as much as you can, as fast as you can.
And I was inspired by my brother Vikram, who's a non-speaking autistic individual who actually learned to type at the age of 27 by using a letterboard and typing his first words. And we realized that he was a brilliant poet, had so much potential, was significantly overlooked, and if brought into the workforce, like so many others, could bring so much value to society and the economic world. So I'll pass it on to Connor. It's great to be here.
Some job seekers or neurodistinct professionals explain what being able to code or something does for them. It's so interesting to me because it's like, oh, well, that's what graphic design or that's what creating music or something does for me. The way that they explain that it's almost like meditative or therapeutic or healing to them or very, very empowering. We all need these outlets, and we should all be doing what we're good at. Our STARS program started in 2019, and it's kind of our cornerstone program. And in short, that's our recruiting program. But we do much more than recruit, and we want to make sure that the organizations that we're partnering with are truly walking the walk and not kind of phoning it in, right? So mostly big companies, employers of 50,000 employees or more or so, but all size companies. We support them through a 3-step process. Was to be cliche, being the person that I needed when I was younger. And that's what had me end up being in human services and job coaching, mostly for young adults on the autism spectrum, and realizing that I was pretty good at that, and not just because because of the way I thought, not in spite of the way I thought, right? Because a lot of my needs are similar, and because as a dyslexic thinker and an ADHDer, I can see things kind of backwards, upside down, inside out. And so we're kind of innovators by design. A lot of us neurodivergents, right?
Lots of
And so
perspective.
yeah. And so realized I was not only passionate about it but good at it. And so that's what brought me on my path. I really was kind of raised on this idea of just being defined based on limitations, and I think that's a lot of people, a lot of neurodistinct people, job seekers and professionals can identify with that experience. And so when I came into adulthood, all I could picture doing was changing that.
I want to ask you, what's inspired you to be part of the World Autism Summit?
Well, my new friendship with you, first of all, Karen. Thank you again. It's such an important thing that you're doing. Such critical work. Having conversations like these and spreading the message of inclusion far and wide to whoever will hear it is the most important thing that we can do. To me, it's about knowledge sharing, right? I mean, this is despite all the attention and the energy in the space of neurodiversity and employment, there's still so much more to be done. So there's no such thing as something like competition or anything like that in a space like this, because it's a critical work, such important work.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much for being here. Yes.
thanks, Karen, for hosting. My name's Connor. I'm the co-founder and COO here at Mentra. I am autistic myself, diagnosed on the spectrum as an adult at age 24. And really, Jilka kind of hit the nail on the head. We're building a network for neurodivergents around the world, starting in the US, to be able to fully unmask their neurodiversity in the job finding process, and to find employers that value them, not despite their neurodivergence, but because of the unique skills they bring. And really, this all got started when Jillica was sharing the story of her brother, which is a really powerful one, at TEDx Georgia Tech about 4 years ago. So I was organizing that TED Talk conference. She was speaking, and we realized that this was a huge need.
Well, certainly globally is a key word for us. The problem doesn't know borders, it doesn't know regions, it doesn't know languages, it doesn't know cultures. It's a problem that affects these children. So having a solution like Akiva that is, if you have access to Wi-Fi, you've got access to our platform, and a very good platform for therapy, education, and training for kids living with autism. So the goal for us is obviously starting on a regional basis, because this is our backyard, but we certainly want to be able to help kids and families on a global basis, regardless of language, regardless of socioeconomic or geographic circumstances. We want to have them to have access to our system. There shouldn't be any barriers of entry wherever they are, provided they have good Wi-Fi. One of the biggest hurdles, I think, has been for that vocational process has been, what does the hiring and training procedure look like for any particular employer? And that process just might not work for somebody that's on the spectrum. Even though they may be a great candidate for the job, they may have the skills needed, that hiring and training process might be a barrier to entry for them. So how can we use technology to minimize and mitigate those barriers, to be more flexible in that hiring and onboarding and training process? And that's where we think that we really can come in to help an employer or assist the employer with that potential candidate by giving them another tool to use in that hiring and training process. And we can design an entire store in VR, and you can show a candidate how a store works, functions, interact with people in the store, all in VR, before they have to be integrated into the physical space.
So the innovation that we're really focused on the most right now is that transdisciplinary team developmental science. And let me explain what that means. Transdisciplinary means the OT knows the sensory-motor system, but they're not usually well-trained in language. The speech pathologist is usually well-trained in language, but usually knows a lot less about the sensory-motor system. So when a speech therapist gives a speech test, they view it and interpret the results from the lens of language. When the OT gives their test, they view it from the lens of sensory-motor skills. But take, for example, the OT is trying to measure the child's ability to do three-step directions. They might call it a praxis test, which is motor skills. And they realize that, Nakina really can't do three-step praxis tasks. So she has some motor skill deficits. But Karen, then we find out from the speech pathologist that you can give Lakina three-step anything, and whether it's praxis or anything, she can't hold on to three-step directions. So
one of the things that I have noticed a difference, there's a stigma around words. For example, before I could say, I'm an Aspie, Asperger's, and it was okay. In fashion, as I call it.
Yeah, in
fashion. But then when you change the wording and you say, I am autistic, it still provokes some sort of shock in a lot of people. But it's the same. It's the same, and that's one of the things that we need to educate, that it is okay to be dyslexic. It is okay to be autistic. It is beautiful to be a neurodivergent. It is who you are.
I am a big believer that it's leaders in organizations that are making things happen in the world. They're the ones developing the technology. They're the ones that are setting up the school systems. They're doing so many things that are moving us to a future better than the past. And I'd like to equip those leaders to do it in an inclusive way, because it's my belief that if we get more people involved in creating those solutions, then the solutions will be optimized. So oftentimes we maybe create a solution, but we haven't thought of the unintended consequence, how this is going to impact someone that wasn't a part of that solution. So when leaders operate inclusively, they have the best opportunity to solve, really complex and important problems. And so I want to make that as practical and easy to do as possible, in the most human way possible. That's the impact I want to have. I work in leadership development, and I specialize in companies that have STEM professionals, people from science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Those industries tend to have quite a few people that are on spectrum and also that are neurodiverse. And so I have tried to develop tools and methodologies for these leaders because, some of them are better at the heady stuff than the hardy stuff, as I like to say, And it's kind of true for a lot of leaders in business. It doesn't, you don't have to be, since all of us are neurodiverse, but you don't have to be on autism to have that become a problem. But my work is really focused on helping these individuals create environments where all can thrive, really understand the interpersonal relationships, the social and emotional component of leadership, and really spell it out so anybody can do it.
What is your biggest why for what you do?
Because, every child has a gift that they can bring to the world if we let them, and if they understand what their gift is. Like, the thing that I think of when I look out into the world today, I see a lot of fear of the unknown, which makes people back into some very dark corners. And I have these wonderfully brilliant autistic students that I work with who sometimes when somebody sees something really just very black and white, that is a good thing to put out there in the world. I think earlier in education, there was sort of a push towards, especially with the kids who were a little just aspy, more quirky, right? The kids who didn't really fit in at school, but they were smart, but they couldn't always express it in the way school wanted you to express it. Like, they are just one of us. Understanding of autism and how it's developed over time. What we come to understand is that, like many things, it's a spectrum, and it's just another way of being in the world. But the more we understand each other, the better we are at coexisting. by creating a safe, effective learning environment for students who are on the spectrum, then I'm helping them develop the skills they need to meet their goals.
Yes.
And by doing that, I'm helping them develop a growth mindset, problem-solving skills, self-confidence in their own abilities. And then they go out into the world and they're going to be able to do that as well, not only for themselves to make their way, but to lend a hand to the next neurodivergent person. And then when I found out about the World Autism Today Foundation and the channel, I was so excited because I thought this is such an innovative way to make what we know and what we're learning more accessible to everybody. There's not a lot of equity always in getting services for your students worldwide. If they're neurodiverse. And so what a wonderful idea, Karen. I'm so glad I met you.
The number of parents who I've talked with who have the same story, and they say, Jonathan, in our journey to look for the best resources we can for a child, we speak with this professional. I mean, you just mentioned some, Karen, the Miller method, and they're great and they do what they do. But then we talk with this other professional over here, and they're great and they're good at what they do. But then as a parent, we're sort of monkey in the middle, sometimes having to figure out not only scheduling and affordability and stuff, but how do they work together? And we get advice from this person, which sounds good, and advice from this person, which sounds good. And we really wish that there was more of a cohesive plan in the field. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Example of this is like, I've always found it really hard to hold down friendships, and it's not because I'm a bad friend or anything, but it's just that I forget that when my friends aren't in the room with me, like I love them, but I just forget they exist, right? Like I'm like, oh, my best friend in England, like she's amazing and I love her, and that's like the end of the thought, right? So I have things like timers on my phone, I have reminders on my calendar, so like my phone will ping in the morning and be like, remember to answer your text messages, or like my calendar will ping and be like, it's been a month since you spoke to your best friend, like you should probably do that. And I know that's a function of my ADHD, right? That's like, and autism as well. It's not that I don't love people, it's not that I don't have that capacity, it's that my brain is very visual, it's focused on what's in front of me. And it's about remembering that autistic children become autistic adults, and we need to be able to cater to them and to provide them accommodations and the services they need so they can thrive. So we work purely from a strengths-based perspective, which is, I mean, and this is not to say that the disability model of autism isn't important, it is, but the strengths-based perspective looks to provide accommodations and services so that neurodiverse people can can use their strengths, right? Can can thrive in this world that really wasn't built for us. And I'm hoping through that we can, we can really improve the employment statistics. We can really help individuals achieve their dreams, so that's really what we do.
in reality, technology increases the quality of the service. It allows us to examine our results in real time without having to hire a statistician.
Thank you. It's a class called Express Yourself Through the Miracle Project.
I really think that the answer, particularly systemically, to kind of any and all relationship development is inclusion and access. You know, if we're not part of the conversation, then we're not part of the conversation. You know, that the conversation is happening about us. And there has been, you know, in disability history, a lot of things done to or for disabled folks without their input, without their consent, without their participation.
My connection with people is I cannot talk to you in medical words. I cannot talk to you in that gibberish language. No, I need to talk to you in your ways, in your language. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
But everything to me has to make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard for the layman to understand a lot of things sometimes.
That's right. And we push. And the thing is, what happens now in our world, everything is so easy with, let's say, give me the pill.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would love to explain, what I try to teach is my body is my responsibility. And my body is my commitment. Why did they turn cancerous?
Oh, that's amazing.
Because everything per se, it's basically the same metabolic reactions. We're going to be, let's say, talking about ASD, we're going to be talking about neurodegeneration or neuroinflammation or any degree of something. It's the same metabolic reactions that apply to every other organ. The pathways are there. The cytokines are there. What is called epigenetic or epigenome, what we apply to our genes, because we all understand that genes are the gun and the environment is the trigger. to answer the question why, so it makes sense to me. I need to answer the question why the cells are not behaving properly. And when I can answer this question why, then I can explain it, then I can teach. And when I can teach, we can change the world.
Nice, because you could see the cells. You could actually see.
That's correct. That's a whole thing, because I see abnormal cells. I see cancerous cells.
Yeah.
And that's why I learn from cancer to health. I want to learn the sequence, what happened. What does environment and everything brings and applies to our cells? Why the what is called metabolome or cellular metabolism changed, and why is it applied to so many frequent conditions lately? Right. Because if I can explain it, if I can tie it up, if I can link it, then I can change it. And the changes will be the behavior changes and the changes that we can apply to our lifestyles. It concerns me about ASD because, as you know, that the rate of ASD is not climbing slowly.
Right.
It's climbing up very, very sharply. So absolutely concerns me, because what happened in the last 50 years, what happened in the last 100 years, I don't think that we have changed a lot in terms of our genetic makeup. Mm-hmm. But something turned in our life and the life around us for the rate of ASD to be exponentially and excruciatingly high.
I think it's important. In Italy, the family is the center this is the center to help young people. So for autistic child, the family is very important. Sometimes the family is strong, so is a big help for autistic child. Yes. When the family is strong, is a problem here in Italy. Because the institution often don't help enough. So right. The family is the center.
There's always been, and I think it's wonderful to have a lot of early intervention to support individuals who are younger and through childhood who are on the autism spectrum. But the reality is that a lot of individuals are not ready and don't want to do a lot of that work during that time. Mm-hmm. Just getting by in childhood and the amount of learning that comes and the amount of information that has to be processed is phenomenal and overwhelming. And so to try and add some of this extra information or this extra knowledge and learning, for some people needs to wait. And then it comes up during that adolescent stage, especially around that social change and transition that comes in too. So I think that, again, getting the timing right and recognizing that adolescence may be the time that we need to go there. is really the response that we need to have.
So before we started, we got money, several $100,000 to convene 2 medical conferences. One I held at Duquesne University and one at the Medical School of West Virginia, okay, at the university. Mm-hmm. We invited people to come in and criticize the $1.5 million autism study we were about to make, because that's how you really do good science. I brought a lot of MD, PhDs in. For example, one of the 21 biomarkers we found in autism was a guess by one of the reviewers of my work, say, before we get started, I want you to review this. So we paid them each $5,000 to review in great detail. And he said, I can't justify it, but I have a hunch. Well, we were doing 406 parameters. So after the review, we increased it to 409 parameters. And sure enough, that guess from that MD, PhD turned out to be a biomarker. At one of the autism conferences, I got the top 5 MDs there, and I gave them each a piece of paper. And I say, tell me the 5 top measurements you need, and forget that someone has told you it can't be done.
Wow.
One of them that we have now 3 patents on was one of those, where Martha Herbert and Scott Faber and David Berger, they all put it as one of their top 5. But they said, but it can't be done. And the world was in a disagreement by 3 orders of magnitude. We now make that measurement on human blood in these children to plus or minus 5%.
Wow.
The world was arguing over 3 orders of magnitude what the number should be. And it's critical to understanding their oxidative stress and things like that. So measurement is one way we improve medicine, obviously. Autism was a big mystery. When I came into it, Pennsylvania, which is where I'm located, was the 8th state in the United States of America to say, no, it's not a learning disability. These children actually are really ill and they need to be covered by their health insurance. The insurance companies were trying to not reimburse the parents for their health care by saying it was a learning disability. And of course, now 48 states that I know of have all made that exact same decision, that there is a health component here to the children, and that it is a real health situation. And this is why measurements are such a key part of that. So
I'd like to ask you, what has inspired you to become part of the World Autism Summit?
Well, I got into that sort of by accident, since I was in Congress and I was sent out to investigate when a gentleman walked into a nuclear power plant and set off all the alarms with his lungs before any nuclear fuel had even arrived. So they sent me to Harvard School of Public Health to research this. I came back and said, this is real, people. This is not a joke. We can measure it. It can be prevented. And we can mitigate a house to be free of it, which is why we have the radon laws. As of about 5 years ago, Congress reached out to me and said, do you realize that that one piece of legislation and the research you did have saved 1.5 million American lives minimum?
Mm.
So here I'm in, that was my foray into preventative health. Medical school has a theme and will be based on rural health, which is the only medical school dedicated to rural health, which makes measurement at a distance a critical technology. And my recent patents, which have been granted by the US EPA, Patent Office, and also the European Patent Office, after one look, they didn't ask for anything. They said, here you go. This is a totally new field. Here are your patents. So
So Pranjali, how do you identify the needs and the problems of people with autism?
Because I'm certified neurophysiotherapist. And then my interest of practice was pediatric. And then I worked in a couple of multi-speciality center for pediatric, got certified in multiple different techniques to treat pediatric. So people must be aware about neurodevelopmental approaches and sensory integration, sensory processing treatment. Change the lifestyle of autistic people, then it will, like, let's say in 5 years down the line, what happens, right? It's a big movement. And then Karen, you are actually like geared up for all of that thing, and I'm just like supporting your cause. And one day I will like to say that this whole paradigm shift we are going to do by different action. This is one of the tasks and action what you're doing to have summit, so that people will be well informed and authentically.
Yes, authentically. I love that. How can we set up systems for success in partnership relationships that you think?
Oh, the whole of this conversation is going to be on that.
Okay.
I believe not one person can make change. It has to be team approach. Don't you think, like Karen, like you and me are like struggling to inform people?
Yes.
Get together, and this is the first line of action.
Yes.
That people should understand everyone can participate. Every single person around you or around us can participate in understanding, and just not verbally saying that I care,
right?
Doing something in their actions.
Yes. Breaking down barriers.
That's
how do you want to make the biggest impact in the world around your area of expertise?
Impact starts from within. Impact starts from our friend circle, our social circle. The small steps are going to take us miles long. I just launched new clinic. Karen, you are well aware about Milestone Physio and Wellness Clinic. And this is like a milestone of my even life, because what I thought of, like, and the name suggests physio and wellness. So I'm moving this, the healthcare system towards a wellness, well-being, and holistic care. So the impact should be last longing. It should start from within. It should be so authentic that you walk the walk, talk the talk. Okay. Platform makes me reach to the not just general public, but very, very proficient, skilled professionals also. So this is the great idea to have this summit where we are raising our voice towards just extending our help and care for autistic population.
We don't collaborate enough, you know. And so the way I think we need to improve that is essentially the way we've done everything else, which is a lot of advocacy, a lot of insistence on how important collaboration is, and doing it anyway, and finding ways. You know, one of my mentors used to say that the way to not be depressed was to take more risks and get trickier. And I think that given the pressures of time allocation and funding,